time history for sleep.
What if a single deity held the keys to all knowledge, magic, and time itself? In the sprawling pantheon of ancient Egypt, one god was the architect of wisdom, the divine scribe of fate itself. We journey into the abyss of myth to discover the legend of Thoth. But where did such a monumental deity come from? In the swirling, infinite chaos of the pre-creation void, known to the Egyptians as none, the very concept of a beginning was yet to be born. It is here, in this cosmic abyss, that the genesis of Thoth is shrouded in the mists of primordial myth. Some traditions tell of a god who needed no creator. Imagine a being of pure intellect, a thought that thinks itself into existence. In this telling, Thoth emerges alongside the great sun god Ra, not as his child, but as his complementary half. Thoth is the divine mind, the heart of Ra, and the sacred voice, the tongue of Ra. While Ra possessed the will to create, it was Thoth who held the knowledge of how to create. He was a self-begotten force of order, reason made manifest against the formless chaos. Yet, in a fascinating and darker telling, Thoth is said to have burst forth directly from the head of Set, the god of storms and disorder. This violent birth, emerging from the mind of his conceptual opposite, suggests a profound truth, that wisdom is not merely the absence of chaos, but the mastery over it. This divine intellect required a terrestrial home, a place on earth where his wisdom could pool and be venerated. That place was Kuno, the city of the Eight, known to the Greeks as Hermopolis Magna. This was no ordinary city. It was the philosophical cradle of Egypt. It was here that the Ogdoad led, the 8 primordial deities who embodied the very essence of the chaos before creation, were said to have resided. Was it here, in this hub of cosmic theory, that Thoth's role as the voice of creation was truly defined? The priests of Hermopolis certainly believed so. They taught that while other gods shaped the world with their hands or their will, Thoth shaped it with his voice. He was the divine utterance. At the dawn of time, it was the sound of Thoth's call that gave names to the unnamed, decay that gave form to the formless, and that spoke the sacred words which brought the universe into being. His voice was the cosmic law that separated the sky from the earth and light from the darkness out to mortal eyes. This cerebral power took 2 iconic forms. He appeared as the majestic ibis, a sacred bird whose long, curved beak mirrored the crescent moon. This linked him eternally to the lunar cycles, to the measurement of time, and to the ebb and flow of the natural world. Just as the ibis would probe the fertile mud of the Nile for sustenance, Thoth probed the universe for its hidden truths. He also manifested as the sagacious baboon. Ancient Egyptians observed baboons chattering at the rising sun, and interpreted this as the wise animals greeting the sun god Ra on his daily journey. The seated, pensive baboon became the very image of the patient scribe, the thoughtful judge, and the keeper of sacred records, in a pantheon filled with gods of immense physical power, gods of the sun, the sky, and the underworld. Thoth stood apart. He was not a warrior who won battles with brute force, but a strategist who won them with intellect. He was not a creator who molded the world from clay, but the architect who drew its divine blueprints. He was the mind of the pantheon, the celestial librarian and the divine arbiter who ensured the universe ran not on chance, but on a foundation of reason, balance, and sacred law. He was the very embodiment of divine intelligence, with the cosmos now spoken into existence and his own nature defined. The god of wisdom turned his gaze from the heavens to the earth, preparing to bestow upon mortals a gift of unimaginable power, a gift that would alter the course of history forever. A technology of the soul capable of conquering both time and death, having established himself as the divine mind of the cosmos. The silent keeper of all knowledge, Thoth understood a fundamental truth. A library unread is just a tomb for thoughts. Knowledge, to have power, must be shared. And so, in a world where history was as fleeting as a spoken word, lost to the wind the moment it was uttered, Thoth prepared his greatest gift for mankind. Imagine a world without permanence, where promises fade, stories warp with every telling, and the wisdom of your ancestors dies with them. This was the world before Thoth. He descended not with a sword, but with a palette and red brush. He showed humanity how to capture a thought, how to give a sound a shape, how to transform the ephemeral breath of speech into an eternal, visible mark. He gave them the Maju Necher, the words of the gods. We call them hieroglyphs. This was no mere alphabet. To the ancient Egyptians, hieroglyphs were not a simple record of reality. They were an active ingredient in creating it. The symbols were imbued with divine magic. To carve the name of a pharaoh into a temple wall was to ensure his eternal existence. To write a curse was to give it venomous life. To inscribe a prayer was to make the plea tangible to the gods. Writing was not an act of description. It was an act of creation, a power once reserved for the gods, now delivered into mortal hands by their most trusted emissary. And those who wielded this power, the scribes, were revered. They were the earthly disciples of Thoth, their hands guided by his divine wisdom. In a society built on agriculture and manual labor, the scribe was set apart. His sacred craft was a path to power, influence, and a form of immortality. While pyramids might crumble and empires fall, the words they inscribed could, theoretically, last forever, carrying names and deeds across the unyielding expanse of time. Yet, Thoth's mastery was not confined to the silent stone. He was the god of eloquence, the master of oratory whose voice could bring order to chaos. In the great councils of the gods, when tempers flared and cosmic war loomed, it was Thoth who stepped forward. His arguments were not of force, but of impeccable logic and reason. It was his silver tongue that mediated the brutal, centuries-long dispute between Horus and Set, his reasoned discourse preventing the pantheon from tearing itself apart. He taught that the right word, spoken at the right time, was more powerful than any weapon. This fusion of written symbol and spoken sound reached its apex in the language of ritual. Thoth was the author of the most potent incantations and the most sacred prayers. He understood that for magic to be effective, it required absolute precision. The spells contained within the Book of the Dead, designed to guide a soul through the perilous underworld, had to be recited perfectly. What do you think would happen if a single syllable was mispronounced? A misplaced sound, a forgotten word, and the spell would not only fail, but could potentially unleash unforeseen horrors. Thoth's gift was a divine science, where language was the formula to manipulate the very fabric of existence. He gave humanity the tools to record their history, to build their society, and to speak with the gods. He taught them that words, whether carved in stone or carried on the air, held the ultimate power to create, to preserve, and to protect. But with every word recorded, every deed noted, a great cosmic ledger was being written, a record of every mortal life. And so the question arises, for what ultimate purpose was this divine record being kept? What final, inescapable judgment awaited the souls of men and women, whose every action was now written in the eternal ink of the God of knowledge? With the divine words spoken and the secrets of magic unlocked, knowledge itself now flowed through the veins of creation. But knowledge without record is like a whisper in the desert wind, fleeting, powerful, but ultimately lost to the sands of time. To ensure that divine wisdom and cosmic order would endure for eternity, Thoth assumed his most crucial, most enduring role. He became the scribe of the gods, the divine memory of the universe. In the great halls of Mat, the celestial chamber where truth and order were enshrined, Thoth stood as the silent chronicler of all existence. With a palette of cosmic ink and a reed pen plucked from the banks of the celestial Nile, he diligently recorded everything: the triumphs and transgressions of the gods, the succession of every pharaoh, the laws that governed the heavens, and the intricate destinies of all beings. Every battle won, every temple raised, every prayer uttered by a mortal all were inscribed upon his infinite scrolls, creating a perfect, incorruptible chronicle of eternity. Imagine a being who doesn't just observe history, but writes it as it happens, whose records form the very fabric of the past, present, and future. Thoth's duty extended beyond the deeds of gods and men. He was the great astronomer, the keeper of the cosmic clock. He chronicled the sacred journey of Ra across the sky each day and the silent, silver path of the moon each night. He plotted the cycles of the stars and the movements of the planets, weaving them into a grand celestial calendar. It was Thoth's meticulous charting of the heavens that gave Egypt its 365-day calendar, a revolutionary invention that allowed civilization to predict the Nile's annual flood and master the seasons. He was not merely a historian. By understanding the profound patterns of the cosmos, he became a master of prophecy. His presence was indispensable in the divine assemblies. When the gods gathered to pass judgment or forge cosmic decrees, Thoth was there, his pen poised. He was Ra's vizier, the ultimate secretary, ensuring every word spoken, every oath sworn, was documented with unerring precision. In disputes between gods, where passions ran high and memories could be swayed, Thoth's scrolls were the final, unimpeachable authority. His writing was not just a record of justice, it was the architecture of justice, written foundation upon which the stability of the pantheon rested. But what secrets did these celestial records hold? It is said that Thoth maintained a divine library, a place beyond mortal comprehension, filled with scrolls of arcane power. Here were the true names of all things, which granted mastery over them. Here were the spells that wove the universe into being, and the counterspells that could unravel it. This was not a simple collection of texts. It was the source code of reality, a library of sacred and dangerous wisdom, guarded by Thoth's own immense intellect. To possess even a single page from this library was to hold power beyond any pharaoh's dream. Beyond this mystical grandeur, Thoth was the embodiment of a divine, incorruptible bureaucracy. In the complex machinery of the cosmos, with its countless laws, pacts, and hierarchies, Ati was the force that maintained order. His meticulous bookkeeping ensured that no divine promise was ever forgotten, no cosmic law ever misquoted, and no soul's fate ever left to chance. He was the quiet, methodical intelligence that kept the gears of the universe turning smoothly. He recorded the lives of gods and the reigns of kings. His most profound duty as a scribe was not for the living, but for the dead. For when a mortal soul stood at the final gateway, it was Thoth's records that would be consulted, and his pen that would seal their fate in the eternal afterlife. So, what happened when the heart of a pharaoh or a commoner was brought before him, to be weighed against the single, pure feather of truth? From the infinite scroll of knowledge, we turn our gaze upwards to the great, dark parchment of the night sky. For Thoth's domain was not confined to the silent libraries of the gods. It was etched in the heavens themselves, in the silent, silver majesty of the moon. As Ra commanded the blazing certainty of the day, Thoth was the master of the night's gentle mysteries, the lord of its cyclical rhythm. The moon, known to the Egyptians as Aja, was Thoth's celestial vessel, his eye in the darkness. But this eye was not always whole. In the titanic struggle between Horus and Set, the moon, representing Horus's left eye, was viciously torn apart, plunging the world into absolute darkness. It was a moment of pure chaos, a rending of the cosmic order. It was Thoth who patiently, piece by piece, gathered the fragments of shattered light. With his divine magic and incantations, he healed the wounded celestial eye, restoring its luminescence. This myth, the contendings of Horus and Set, served as the foundational explanation for the moon's phases. Its monthly waning and waxing was seen as a perpetual echo of this divine injury and Thoth's miraculous healing. By doing so, Thoth became more than a healer. He became the eternal regulator of the heavens, ensuring that the darkness would never again reign supreme. He decreed the moon's precise, rhythmic journey, transforming a symbol of cosmic battle into a reliable clock for all eternity. And with a celestial clock, one can measure time itself. The Egyptians initially followed a calendar based purely on the moon's cycles, but this was an imperfect measure, drifting against the seasons and the all-important flooding of the Nile. Order required precision. In a tale of divine ingenuity, Thoth challenged the moon god Khonsu to a game of Sanut, a game of strategy and fate. The stakes: a fraction of the moon's own light. Thoth, the master of intellect, played flawlessly, winning over and over until he had accumulated a 72nd part of the moon's illumination. This stolen light was enough to create 5 brand new days. These 5 epigomenal days were added to the end of the 360-day year, creating the 365-day calendar we still recognize today. They were considered a time outside of time, potent and perilous, marking the birthdays of Egypt's most important deities: Osiris, Horus, Set, Isis, and Nephthys. With this single act of cosmic gambling, Thoth invented the stable year. He gave humanity the power to predict the Nile's flood, to know when to plant and when to harvest, to schedule sacred festivals with divine accuracy. He brought the vast, chaotic expanse of time into a system of order, reason, and measure. This instinct to measure, to regulate, and to bring balance is the very core of Thoth's being. His mastery over the cycles of the moon was not separate from his role as the divine arbiter. It was its celestial expression. Just as he weighed the light of the moon against the darkness of the night, T understood that life itself was a series of moments to be weighed and measured. Every tick of his celestial clock was a testament to his ultimate authority over the cycles of existence: birth, life, death, and renewal. Symbolically, the moon's light became a metaphor for Thoth's own wisdom. While the sun's glare could be blinding, representing absolute, unquestionable power, the moon offered a softer, more reflective luminescence. It was the light of the scholar, the seeker, the magician. It was the light that didn't banish shadows, but allowed one to see within them, to navigate the darkness of ignorance and find hidden truths. Thoth, through the moon, became the illuminator of the night, and a silent guide for every soul journeying through the unknown. He had ordered the heavens and given humanity the measure of their days, but his greatest act of measurement was yet to come. In a realm where the sun and moon hold no sway, what happens when a soul, having lived its measured days, finally stands before the gods to account for its time on earth? For in the silent halls of the afterlife, Thoth the timekeeper must become Thoth, the divine accountant, and the weight he measures is not that of a celestial body, but of the human heart. As the celestial scribe, Thoth recorded the verdict of every soul, but his power extended far beyond merely chronicling what was. He was the divine architect of what could be, the very source from which all sacred knowledge flowed. Imagine a single mind containing the blueprint of creation itself. A consciousness where science and magic were not opposing forces, but two sides of the same divine coin. This was the mind of Thoth. Priests, scholars, healers, and magicians all drank from this well of infinite wisdom, for he was the patron of every sacred and intellectual art. When the gods themselves were wounded, it was Thoth they called upon. He was the celestial physician, his knowledge of the body both divine and mortal absolute. In the epic battle between Horus and Set, when Horus's eye was torn out and shattered, it was Thoth who patiently reassembled the fragments, breathing magical life back into it and creating the powerful symbol of healing and protection. The Eye of Horus. This mythological act echoed in the mortal world, where ancient medical texts like the Ebers Papyrus were believed to be gifts from Thoth, blending practical anatomical knowledge with the potent incantations necessary to make the cures effective. He knew the secrets of herbs and the hidden rhythms of the body, but understood that true healing required mending the spirit as much as the flesh. This understanding of order was not limited to living beings. It was woven into the fabric of the cosmos itself. Thoth was the master of mathematics and the lord of celestial measurement. He saw the universe not as chaos, but as a symphony of numbers, a divine equation, the geometry that allowed for the construction of the Great Pyramids, the astronomy that predicted the life-giving flood of the Nile, the very creation of the 365-day calendar. All were seen as reflections of his cosmic mind. For the Egyptians, mathematics was a sacred language, a way to trace the divine patterns of Mat across the heavens and bring that perfect order down to earth. But what is a divine pattern without the power to shape it? Here Thoth's knowledge transcended the physical and entered the realm of pure magic, Ka, the fundamental energy the gods used to create the world. Thoth was its ultimate master. He understood that words, especially the sacred hieroglyphs he invented, held inherent power. To write a thing was to give it form. To speak its name was to command its essence. The intricate spells found in the Book of the Dead, the protective charms carved into amulets, the powerful incantations whispered in temple halls, these were not mere superstitions. They were precise, spiritual technologies, divine formulas crafted by Thoth to allow mortals to channel the power of the gods, to protect the living, and to guide the dead. Yet, Thoth's greatest secrets were not shouted from the heavens. They were whispered in the dark, guarded with absolute reverence. He was the keeper of esoteric wisdom, of profound truths accessible only to the initiated few who had proven their worth. This was not knowledge for the masses, but a hidden wisdom that unlocked the deepest mysteries of life, death, and the nature of the gods. He was the guardian at the threshold of enlightenment, ensuring that the most potent forces in the universe remained in balance. He recorded all this knowledge, all his secrets of healing, creation, and power. But he saved his most profound and dangerous wisdom for a single, legendary text. A book said to grant its reader the power of the gods themselves. So what secrets did this infamous Book of Thoth truly contain, and what terrible fate awaited any mortal foolish enough to find it? But for all his mastery over esoteric knowledge and the secrets of creation, Thoth's most profound, most solemn duty was performed not in the temples of the living, but in the silent, echoing chambers of the afterlife. It was here, in the great hall of two truths, that the god of writing would fulfill his ultimate purpose, to serve as the unshakable pillar of cosmic order. This cosmic order was known to the Egyptians as Mat. More than just a goddess, Mat was the fundamental principle of truth, balance, justice, and harmony. She was the divine rhythm to which the universe moved, from the rising of the sun to the flooding of the Nile. And Thoth was her most steadfast ally, her divine implementer. While other gods waged wars and vied for power, Thoth's unwavering allegiance was to the preservation of this perfect equilibrium. Imagine the scene. Drawn from the papyrus scrolls of the Book of the Dead, a soul, stripped of its mortal coil, enters the vast, intimidating hall. Before them sits the great god Osiris, lord of the underworld, enthroned as the ultimate judge. 42 divine assessors look on, ready to hear the soul's plea. And in the center of the hall stand the golden scales, gleaming in the ethereal light. On one side, a simple jar containing the deceased's heart, the seat of their intellect, emotion, and conscience. On the other, a single, pure white ostrich feather, the feather of Ma, at dot, as the trembling soul begins to recite the negative confession, declaring their innocence of sins. I have not stolen. I have not murdered. I have not been deceitful. One figure stands beside the scales, his ibis head bent in concentration. This is Thoth. He is not here to offer comfort or to pass sentence. He is here as the divine scribe of truth. With his reed pen and palette, T prepares to perform the most critical act of record keeping in all of existence. This was the heart's reckoning. The scales would tip, revealing the true weight of a person's life. The Egyptians believed the heart was a witness to every deed, and it could not lie in the presence of the gods. If the heart was light, unburdened by sin and deceit, it would balance perfectly against the feather. The soul would be declared Makaru, true of voice. Thoth, with a precise and steady hand, would inscribe the favorable verdict. The soul had earned its place in the field of reeds, an eternal paradise. But if the heart was heavy, weighed down by a lifetime of transgressions, the scales would plunge downwards. The verdict was damnation, and Thoth, ever the impartial servant of Mat, would record this outcome with the same dispassionate accuracy. There was no appeal, no plea for mercy. His record was absolute. At this verdict, the monstrous creature, Amitpart, crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus, would lurch forward and devour the heavy heart. For that soul, it was the ultimate end, not hell, but total annihilation. A second death from which there was no return. Thoth's presence was the guarantee of absolute fairness. He was the keeper of the divine ledger, a celestial record where every thought, word, kind, and deed of every being was meticulously inscribed. His scrolls were the final authority, the ultimate evidence in the trial that determined eternity. He was the guardian of cosmic memory, the divine archivist whose work ensured the universe did not descend into chaos. But this ledger, containing the fate of every mortal soul, was not the only sacred text in his possession. Legends whispered of another, far more dangerous book. But Thoth was more than the silent archivist of eternity. To simply record the annals of the gods was not his only duty. For a pantheon born of creation and chaos, a family of immense power and tempestuous emotion, conflict was inevitable. And when the gods themselves went to war, a force was needed not of muscle, but of mind, not of fury, but of unimpeachable reason. The greatest of these celestial conflicts a wound torn across the very soul of Egypt, was the war for the throne between Horus and Set. It was a saga of vengeance and ambition that raged for 80 long years. On one side stood Horus, the rightful heir, son of the murdered Osiris, his heart burning with righteous fury. On the other, his uncle Set, the usurper, the god of chaos and violence, who had seized power through fratricide. Their battles were legendary, shaking the pillars of heaven and the foundations of the earth. As the divine Ennead sat in judgment, they were deadlocked. The gods were paralyzed by familial loyalties and fear. Ra, the sun god, favored the strength and experience of Set, while Isis campaigned relentlessly for her son. Horus, the divine order, teetered on the brink of collapse. Into this maelstrom of divine rage stepped Thoth. He was not a warrior god, but his words carried more weight than any weapon. While Horus and Set tore at one another, it was Thoth who restored the balance. In one brutal confrontation, Set ripped out the eye of Horus, shattering it into pieces. The symbol of legitimate kingship, of clarity and perception, was destroyed. But Thoth, master of magic and healing, painstakingly gathered the fragments and, with his divine knowledge, made the eye whole again. He did the same for Set, healing the grievous wounds inflicted upon him by Horus. Thoth's purpose was not to take a side, but to allow the process of justice to unfold. He was the calm voice in the celestial court, presenting evidence from his own sacred records, reminding the gods of the principles of lineage and divine law. He argued not with passion, but with irrefutable logic. He appealed to Ra not by challenging his authority, but by showing him how crowning a murderer would be a violation of Mat, the fundamental order of the universe that Ra himself was sworn to uphold. Through Thoth's persuasion, the conflict was moved from the battlefield to a series of contests, channeling the god's aggression into trials of skill and cunning. He was the great stabilizer, the counsel who could soothe the divine ego and guide the pantheon away from self-destruction. His interventions were never about victory for one god over another. They were about the victory of order over chaos. He was safeguarding the very structure of the cosmos, ensuring that even the most powerful beings were subject to the law. Thoth's power was the ultimate form of persuasion, the ability to make gods see beyond their own pride and fury to the greater truth. He proved that true strength lay not in the capacity for destruction, but in the wisdom to restore, to heal, and to judge rightly. But Thoth's role as the divine scribe extended far beyond recording the verdicts of the dead. In the deepest, most shadowed corners of Egyptian lore, there are whispers of a power so profound it was said to be locked away from gods and mortals alike, power-bound in papyrus. These were no mere scrolls of history or law. The legends claim they were 42 volumes containing the complete sum of all knowledge. Within their hieroglyphs lay the secrets of creation, mutations that could command the elements, and the rituals that could compel the gods themselves to appear. To read from them was to hold the very architecture of reality in your hands. But such knowledge came with a terrible and inevitable price. A lesson learned through the tragedy of Prince Nani-Ferkaptah, a son of a pharaoh. Nani-Ferkaptah was a scholar and magician, consumed by a singular, dangerous ambition to possess the Book of Thoth. He learned it was hidden at the bottom of the Nile, sunk in a series of nested chests and guarded by a legion of serpents and scorpions. Undeterred, he used his own magic to part the waters and defeat the guardians, retrieving the coveted scroll. He and his wife read its passages, and in an instant, they understood the language of the birds, saw the fish swimming in the deep, and knew the secrets of the sun and moon. But the gods do not suffer such theft lightly. Thoth's knowledge demanded a price paid in blood. One by one, Nana-Furkapeets' beloved wife and son were taken by tragic accidents, their bodies reclaimed by the Nile, heartbroken and cursed. The prince took his own life, clutching the scroll to his chest as he was buried, bound for eternity to the very power he had craved. The scrolls were said to contain two great spells, one to understand the speech of all beasts, and another to gaze upon the gods themselves in their true and terrible forms. This tale became a stark warning woven into the fabric of Egyptian belief. The books of Thoth represented a divine boundary. The pursuit of such absolute power was an act of supreme hubris, a spiritual poison that promised enlightenment but delivered only ruin. Is there a point where the pursuit of knowledge becomes an act of arrogance, a transgression against the natural order? Yet, the allure of this forbidden wisdom was too strong to ever truly disappear. The legend did not die with the pharaohs. As Egypt's glory faded into the memory of the world, the story of Thoth and his secret books found new life in the melting pot of Hellenistic Egypt. The great ibis-headed god was fused with his Greek counterpart, the messenger Hermes. From this union, a new figure emerged, Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great, a mystical sage to whom a new body of writing was attributed, the Hermetic texts, which would form the bedrock of alchemy, astrology, and Western esotericism for centuries to come. The quest for the original books of Thoth became a phantom chase through history, inspiring secret societies and occultists who believed that somewhere, buried in the sands or hidden in a forgotten tomb, the ultimate truths of the universe were still waiting. Perhaps the scrolls were never a physical object at all, but a metaphor for the profound and often dangerous journey into the self and the cosmos. A journey that proves, time and again, that some doors are best left unopened. For in the dying embers of the Egyptian empire, the scribe of the gods would not fade away. He would transform, taking on a new name and a new identity, one that would echo through the secret halls of alchemy and magic for millennia to come. Who was this new god, this thrice great master of the arcane, and how did the wisdom of Thoth become the foundation for Western esotericism? But divine knowledge, once created, could not remain an abstract concept locked away in a celestial library. It had to be wielded. In a cosmos teetering on the edge of chaos, knowledge was a weapon, a shield, and a medicine. And as the pantheon descended into its most bitter and tragic conflict, Thoth would prove that the most powerful force was not a clenched fist, but a well-chosen word. The crisis began with a scream that echoed through the heavens, the murder of the benevolent king, Osiris, at the hands of his jealous brother, Set. The world was broken, its divine order shattered. As the grieving goddess Isis searched desperately for the scattered pieces of her husband, she was not alone. It was Thoth who came to her, not with an army, but with something far more potent, the ancient and powerful words of resurrection. He provided the divine spells, the sacred incantations needed to reassemble the slain god. He taught Isis the magic that could breathe life back into death, if only for a moment, allowing for the conception of their son and heir. Horus. This act of compassion placed Thoth in direct opposition to the usurper Set, while Isis hid her infant son, Horus, in the thick papyrus swamps of the Nile Delta. Set's dark agent scorpions and serpents hunted the child. Here again, Thoth intervened, not as a warrior, but as a guardian and a physician. When a venomous scorpion struck the young god, it was Thoth's magic, sent from the heavens, that drew out the poison and saved the future king. He was the celestial doctor, whose knowledge of anatomy, magic, and cosmic balance made him the ultimate healer. This divine relationship, the wise counselor guiding the rightful king, became the blueprint for mortal rule in Egypt. The pharaoh was the living Horus, and so he naturally sought the counsel of Thoth. Royal scribes and high priests, often calling themselves viceroy of Thoth, would interpret sacred texts and omens, believing they were channeling the god's intellect to guide the state in matters of law, ceremony, and war, to build a temple, to launch a military campaign. To enact a new law required the perceived blessing of Thoth's infinite wisdom. He was the unseen advisor in every throne room, his silent counsel shaping an entire civilization in a world of gods defined by their physical power. What does it say that the one most essential to both kings and other gods was the master of intellect? Thoth's interventions were a masterclass in strategy over strength. He advised Horus in his long and arduous legal battle against Set for the throne of Egypt, providing the arguments and evidence that would ultimately secure his victory. He healed the eye of Horus after it was torn out in battle, an act symbolizing not just physical mending, but the restoration of cosmic order, or Mat. Thoth's battlefield was the mind. His weapons were logic and magic, and his victories were the triumphs of civilization over chaos. He was the grand strategist, the divine diplomat, the silent force ensuring that order would eventually, always prevail. Thoth had proven that knowledge could conquer brute force, that wisdom could heal the deepest wounds, and that divine counsel could steer the fate of empires. He was the arbiter of life's greatest conflicts. But what happened when life itself came to an end? For his most profound and solemn duty was not among the living, but in the silent, shadowy halls of the underworld, where every soul, from the lowest servant to the most powerful pharaoh, would have to face his final, unblinking judgment. But Thoth's immense knowledge was never meant to be a secret, locked away in the celestial libraries of the gods. It was a divine blueprint, a set of instructions intended to bridge the chasm between the mortal and the divine. And it was through the power of ritual and ceremony that this knowledge was made to manifest on earth. Every chant that echoed through a temple hall, every column of incense that spiraled towards the heavens, every offering laid before a golden statue, bore the invisible signature of Thoth. He was the grand architect of divine worship, the choreographer of sacred action. The Egyptians believed that the universe, the Ma'at, was a delicate and ordered system. To maintain this cosmic balance, humanity had to perform its part with absolute precision. It was Thoth who wrote the script for this grand performance, from the moment of birth, when a child's name was spoken in a protective ritual, to the solemn rites that guided a pharaoh to his eternal rest. Thoth's designs provided the framework for existence. He codified the great festivals that marked the turning of the seasons and the flooding of the Nile, transforming agricultural cycles into profound religious dramas. These were not simply traditions. They were cosmic maintenance, essential acts that reaffirmed the covenant between gods and humanity, ensuring the sun would continue to rise and the land would remain fertile. To execute these complex rites, a special class of mortal was required. Thoth became the patron of the priesthood, particularly the elite lector priests, known as the ibis-headed. Their title literally meant he who carries the festival scroll, and these scrolls were believed to contain the very words of Thoth himself. They were his earthly deputies, masters of sacred texts and celestial movements, guided by Thoth's astronomical knowledge. They charted the stars to determine the precise, auspicious moment for every ceremony, for they understood that timing was everything. They did so through Thoth's mastery of Heka, the fundamental energy of magic. The incantations he composed were not prayers filled with hope. They were declarations of power. Each word, each syllable, had to be vibrated at the correct pitch. Each gesture had to be executed with geometric precision. This was a form of sympathetic magic on a cosmic scale. A priest, speaking Thoth's words, wasn't just asking for a blessing. He was aligning himself with the creative frequencies of the universe, momentarily becoming a conduit for divine will. A misspoken word or a faltering gesture could sever this connection, rendering the entire ritual inert, or worse, unleashing chaotic forces. This divine precision extended even to the stones themselves. Thoth's understanding of sacred geometry and mathematics influenced the very architecture of adoration. Temples were not just buildings, they were cosmic engines. The great temple complexes at Karnak and Luxor were astronomically aligned, designed so that on a specific day, like the winter solstice, a beam of sunlight would travel down a long corridor to illuminate the inner sanctum, symbolically impregnating the divine statue with life. This was Thoth's calculus, made manifest in stone, turning entire structures into instruments for channeling celestial energy. His was an unending duty to preserve the purity of these sacred rites. Through his scribes, he ensured the meticulous copying of liturgical texts, safeguarding them against the decay of time and the fallibility of memory. Generation after generation, the rituals had to be perfect, for they were the chains that bound the ordered world together. Thoth, the great administrator, had given humanity the tools to maintain cosmic harmony. He had designed the rituals for a righteous life and the ceremonies to honor the gods. But his greatest and most feared duty was not performed in a sunlit temple. It was invoked in the silent, shadowy halls of the underworld, where every soul, from the lowest farmer to the most powerful pharaoh, would eventually have to face him. And the ultimate ritual of judgment would begin. For in the Hall of Two Truths, Thoth, the scribe, would put down his palette and pick up his scales, preparing to weigh the one thing that could grant eternal life, or condemn a soul to utter annihilation, the human heart. We have seen Thoth as the divine arbiter, the voice of reason in a pantheon of passionate gods. Yet, when the Egyptians carved his image into stone for eternity, they rarely gave him a purely human face. Instead, they looked to the natural world, the banks of the Nile and the pre-dawn light, and found two perfect, living vessels for his divine essence. To understand Thoth, we must understand his sacred animals, the ibis and the baboon. First, consider the elegant, silent grace of the African sacred ibis as it wades through the shallow waters. Its long curved beak dips into the dark, fertile mud, probing for sustenance. To the ancient Egyptians, this was a powerful metaphor. They saw a living scribe's pen, dipping into the ink of the earth to uncover hidden truths. The very shape of the ibis's beak is echoed in early hieroglyphs for Thoth himself. This bird was also a herald of prosperity. Its annual migration coincided with the inundation of the Nile, the flooding that brought life back to the land. The ibis was a sign that the cosmic order was intact, a promise of renewal delivered by the messenger of the gods. It represented the meticulous, scholarly aspect of wisdom, precise, focused, and capable of finding knowledge where others saw only mud. But Thoth's wisdom was not only calm and scholarly. It had a second, more primal form, the sagacious, hamadryas baboon. The Egyptians were keen observers of nature. They saw in the baboon's complex social structures a reflection of the divine order Thoth established. More importantly, they witnessed a daily miracle. At the first light of dawn, these baboons would sit, facing the rising sun. Aton begin to chatter and call out, their arms sometimes raised as if in worship. For the Egyptians, this was no mere animal behavior. It was the greeting of the moon god to the sun god, a daily ritual acknowledging the great celestial clockwork. The baboon, active by day, but also associated with the night and the moon, became the keeper of these cycles, the embodiment of ancient, instinctual intelligence. These were not mere symbols. In Thoth's great cult center of Hermopolis, and across the land, these animals were revered as his living manifestations. Temples housed sacred baboons, whose behavior was studied for divine omens. Vast catacombs were filled with the mummified bodies of millions of ibises, each one a prayer, a votive offering from a humble pilgrim to the great Lord of Knowledge. To honor the ibis was to honor the sacred word. To honor the baboon was to honor the sacred cycles of time. Together, these two forms paint a complete portrait of divine wisdom. The ibis is the intellect scribe, the magician, the architect of language, elegant and precise. The baboon is the intuition, the ancient keeper of cosmic secrets, the raw, primal awareness that existed long before the first word was ever written. When we see Thoth depicted in art, we are being given a clue. The ibis-headed god is the master of texts, spells, and measures. The seated baboon, often placed atop the scales of judgment or holding the lunar disk, is the master of time itself, the silent witness to eternity. Thoth was the master of form, the embodiment of knowledge in both beast and bird. But what of the tools he wielded? What was the true power contained within the sacred symbols he created, the hieroglyphs themselves? And what terrifying secrets were written in his most legendary, and perhaps most dangerous, creation, the mythical Book of Thoth? But Thoth's dominion was never confined to the ethereal halls of the gods or the silent judgment of the dead. His greatest power was the one he gifted to humanity, knowledge, from the grandest temple to the humblest scribe's pallet. His presence was woven into the very fabric of Egyptian life, becoming the silent architect of an entire civilization. Imagine an Egyptian scribe at the dawn of a new day. He unrolls a fresh sheet of papyrus, mixes his ink, and before his reed pen ever touches the surface, he utters a prayer. This prayer is not to Ra, the sun god who gives him light, but to Thoth, the god who gave him his craft. For the thousands of scribes who formed the educated elite of Egypt, Thoth was more than a deity. He was their direct patron, the divine scribe, primeval. They were his descendants, the inheritors of a sacred profession. Their ability to read, write, and calculate was a spark of Thoth's own intellect, a gift that elevated them above all other men, save for the pharaoh himself. This sacred knowledge was cultivated and preserved in legendary institutions known as the Parank, or the houses of life. These were not mere libraries. They were Egypt's first universities, scriptoriums, and scientific academies all rolled into one. Here, under the spiritual guidance of Thoth, the nation's brightest minds gathered. Priests studied theology, physicians memorized anatomical texts, and astronomers charted the heavens. It was within the walls of the houses of life that scribes painstakingly copied and illustrated the funerary texts, including the Book of the Dead, ensuring that the wisdom of Thoth would guide souls through the afterlife for millennia. The houses of life were the earthly echo of Thoth's own divine library, a mortal attempt to contain the infinite knowledge of a god. From these centers of learning, Thoth's influence flowed into every field of human endeavor. When Egyptian astronomers created one of the world's first solar, Talendeza, stunningly accurate 365-day system, they were seen as deciphering the divine order of time. a domain belonging to Thoth. When physicians consulted papyri detailing surgical procedures and pharmaceutical remedies, they believed they were accessing the healing wisdom Thoth himself had used to restore the eye of Horus. How could a civilization raise structures like the pyramids, monuments of impossible geometry and precision? The answer, for the Egyptians, lay not in brute force, but in the divine application of mathematics and engineering, sacred sciences gifted by the Lord of Measurement himself. Yet, perhaps Thoth's most potent legacy lay in the realm of the unseen. For the ancient Egyptians, there was no clear line between science and sorcery, between a formula and an incantation. Both were expressions of Heka, the fundamental force of magic, the power of creation itself. And Thoth was its undisputed master. The priests who practiced this magic were not just men of faith. They were technicians of the sacred. They understood that words, both spoken and written, could shape reality. The hieroglyphs Thoth had invented were not just symbols. They were conduits of power. A spell to heal a sickness, an amulet to protect a child, a curse to vanquish an enemy, all drew their efficacy from the words of the god. The divine language of Thoth. He was the ultimate sorcerer, and his teachings were the bedrock of all Egyptian magic. Scribe, scientist, sorcerer, these were not separate roles, but facets of a single pursuit, the quest for divine knowledge. Thoth's principles of intellect, order, and truth permeated everything, from the laws administered in court to the rituals performed in the temples. He was the invisible current of thought that powered one of history's greatest civilizations. But his wisdom was too profound, his influence too vast, to be contained by a single empire or a single age. As the sands of time began to bury the temples of Egypt, a new identity began to emerge from the whispers of his legend, a fusion of Egyptian god and Greek philosopher, a figure whose secret books were rumored to hold the very keys to the universe. But what happens when the god of a fallen empire is rediscovered, and his lost knowledge promises not just wisdom, but transmutation of the soul itself? For millennia, the ibis-headed god had chronicled the rise and fall of Egyptian dynasties. His wisdom, a constant presence against the shifting sands of time. But the old world was fading. In the 4th century BCE, the conquests of Alexander the Great washed a new culture, teased a new language, and new gods onto the shores of the Nile. Yet for Thoth, this was not an ending. It was a metamorphosis. Imagine the first Greek scholars and soldiers walking through the grand temples of Hermopolis, Thoth's ancient city. They saw depictions of a divine scribe, a messenger between the gods and humanity, a guide for souls in the afterlife, and a master of magic and sacred texts. In this powerful Egyptian deity, they recognized a familiar face, their own swift-footed, clever god, Hermes. The parallels were undeniable. Both were psychopomps, guiding the dead. Both were divine communicators, credited with the invention of writing and the interpretation of divine will. This cultural confluence gave birth to a syncretic figure, a fusion of Egyptian antiquity and Hellenistic philosophy, Hermes Trismegistus. But this was more than a simple merging of names. It was an elevation. The figure that emerged was not just a god, but a deified sage, a human prophet who had attained divine consciousness. The title, Trismegistus, meaning thrice greatest, likely evolved from a common Egyptian epithet for Thoth. Great, used to denote the ultimate superlative. In the mind of the Hellenistic world, this being was the greatest of all priests, the greatest of all kings, and the greatest of all philosophers, the primordial master of all sacred and secular knowledge. From this legendary figurehead flowed a vast and influential body of spiritual philosophy known as the Hermetica. These texts, written between the 1st and 3rd centuries AD, were a potent blend of Egyptian mysticism, Greek philosophy, astrology, and the magical arts. The Hermetic tradition was a quest for gnosis, a direct, personal experience of the divine. It taught that humanity was divine in origin and that through spiritual discipline, the study of the cosmos, and the practice of alchemy, one could remember their divine nature and reunite with the cosmic source. At the very heart of this secret stream of knowledge lies a text of immense power and mystery, the legendary Emerald Tablet, said to have been discovered in Thoth's tomb. This single, cryptic tablet was believed to contain the key to all of existence in a few short, enigmatic lines. Its most famous axiom, that which is below corresponds to that which is above, and that which is above corresponds to that which is below, became the foundational principle of Western esotericism, proposed a universe bound by sympathetic correspondence, where the macrocosm of the heavens was reflected in the microcosm of humanity. For the alchemist, this meant the transformation of lead into gold was a mirror for the soul's purification and ascent to enlightenment. After the fall of Rome, its profound wisdom largely vanished from the West, preserved only in the libraries of the Arab world. It slumbered for 1,000 years, until the dawn of the Italian Renaissance. When the Corpus Hermeticum was brought to Florence, its rediscovery sent shockwaves through the intellectual heart of Europe. Cosimo de' Medici, the great patron of the age, famously instructed his scholars to translate the works of Hermes Trismegistus before the dialogues of Plato. This ancient Egyptian wisdom, reborn in Greek form, fueled the minds of mystics, magicians, and even the earliest scientists, influencing figures from John Dee to Isaac Newton, and embedding itself into the DNA of secret societies for centuries to come. Thoth, the scribe of the gods, had proven to be the ultimate master of adaptation. He shed his ibis form and donned the robes of a Greek philosopher, transforming from a national deity into a universal symbol of esoteric wisdom. His identity had transcended the Nile Valley, becoming a timeless icon for the eternal human search for knowledge. But as his teachings went underground, woven into the fabric of secret traditions and mystical orders, did Thoth truly vanish into the realm of legend? Or did the scribe of the gods simply learn to write himself into the hidden corners of our modern world, waiting to be rediscovered all over again? The great temples of Thoth may have crumbled, their libraries turned to dust, but the mind that conceived them has never truly vanished. For what is a god, if not an idea? And Thoth was, perhaps, the most powerful idea of all, the embodiment of knowledge itself. His story does not end with the fall of his last priest. It simply changes its form, echoing through the millennia too. Find us here, now, in an age he would have surely found fascinating. Look around you. We live in a world built on Thoth's principles. We navigate vast, invisible rivers of data, scribe our thoughts, not in stone but in digital light, can seek connection through a global network that serves as a modern-day great library. Our insatiable quest for information, our drive to understand the cosmos through science, our very reliance on the written word to build societies, this is Thoth's domain, scaled to a planetary level. He is the patron of the programmer crafting elegant code, the scientist deciphering the universe's secrets, and the poet wrestling with the perfect turn of phrase. The tools have changed, but the divine impulse to know, to record, and to communicate remains the very bedrock of our civilization. His presence lingers, often in disguise. When ancient Greek philosophers sought a figure to represent the totality of wisdom, They fused Thoth with their own messenger god, Hermes, creating the legendary Hermes Trismegistus, thrice great Hermes. It was under this name that his supposed teachings, the Hermetic texts, would flow into the Renaissance, becoming a hidden spring for Western esoteric traditions, alchemy, and philosophy. From the arcane symbols in a secret society's lodge, to the wise, magical mentor in a fantasy novel. The archetype of the divine scribe and master of secrets is a ghost that has never left us. He is the quiet understanding that true power lies not in brute force, but in the mind. Yet Thoth's most profound legacy might be his unwavering service to a concept even greater than himself, cosmic truth. Universal order. In our modern world, saturated with conflicting narratives and fleeting opinions, the Egyptian obsession with an underlying objective truth feels more relevant than ever. Thoth, weighing the heart against the feather, reminds us that knowledge without integrity is meaningless, that words have weight, and that justice requires a clear, unbiased accounting, In an era where truth itself seems fragile, what can we learn from a god who dedicated his entire existence to preserving it? This leads to a deeper, more mystical consideration. If Thoth was the divine mind that spoke the world into being, the architect of the laws of nature and civilization, then perhaps his influence is not merely a memory, but a living principle woven into the fabric of reality. Perhaps the spark of human consciousness, our unique ability to comprehend, to create systems, and to tell stories, is a distant echo of his work. We are, in our own small way, architects of our own worlds. Using the gifts he personified, language, reason, and law, to build order from chaos. He is the unseen architect, and we are the builders, working with his divine blueprint. Ultimately, the story of Thoth is not just the chronicle of an ancient deity. It is an invitation to honor the ibis and the baboon within ourselves, the parts of us that seek wisdom, that strive for clarity, and that understand the sacred power of words. He teaches us that the greatest temple is a mind, open to learning, and the most sacred text is the truth we dare to write upon our own hearts. The quest to find Thoth does not end in the sands of Egypt, but in the quiet, reflective chambers of the self. For the God of knowledge lives on, waiting to be discovered, not in a forgotten tomb, but within you. The mysteries of Thoth are vast, and our journey is far from over. If you seek more ancient wisdom, subscribe for epic tales from across mythology. Share your own thoughts on the divine scribe in the comments below, and let your like echo through the halls of history.